Welcome, everyone, to the MMA Happy Hour podcast. I am Kyle Anthony, your host for today. We are talking UFC 330, headlined by Islam Makhachev and Ian Machado Garry. We're going to be breaking down four plays here on the show today. Last weekend we went out there and profited again for clients. We are now on a 17-3 betting run. We have cashed 6 of the last 7 UFC events and absolutely dominated. Our top play last week was on an easy victory on Quillen Salkilled, which was minus 135. First round submission victory, absolutely dominated. Another top play first round victory. Just been a great run overall. Now, if you want to become a client, linked in the description. I already have another 5% play locked in for clients. Have 2 plays in total right now, but we'll have about 5 or 6 as we get closer to fight night. And I also will be at UFC 330 with my son. So really excited about it. Took him to UFC 328. Had an awesome time. So we're taking a little road trip down to Philly for this event. So excited about it. Going to be a great time. But let's cash some tickets. Let's put those winners in the bankroll, and let's focus on this week. So with that being said, let's dive into the main event of the evening between Islam Makhachev and Ian Machado Garry. Now, we've got Islam sitting at minus 340 on the comeback here. We have Ian Machado Garry. He is plus 270. Now, you look at the current champion here, Islam Makhachev, who is just an absolutely elite level wrestler. And that's what you can mostly say about this guy. He's incredibly strong. He's going to come forward. He's going to chain wrestle, look for those takedowns, look to win positionally, bank the rounds, hunt for submissions, and just be really overwhelming to his opponent, force him to be on the defensive, defending takedowns while he is just keeping the pressure going, having that top pressure once he has it on the ground, and looking for those submissions. We're also seeing that over the last couple of years, his striking has absolutely improved. Now, you've got Ian on the other side here, who is a high-level rangy striker, very good footwork, very good at range, good distance management, can really mix it up very well, fast hands, good footwork. And this is the guy here that really creates openings with his angles. He's always moving. He's in the pocket. He's out of the pocket, throws a couple combinations, risk adverse, and definitely a guy that just can push out that kind of volume. Now, we are seeing that he is improving his grappling at the gym he's at, and that's really where we're starting to see at Shoot the Box. I almost forgot. That's where we're really starting to see he's starting to elevate, elevate his grappling, elevating his takedown defense, and that's the most important part about this fight on Saturday is really going to be the takedown defense. That's going to make or break either one of these fighters, and obviously we know that Ian needs to keep this fight standing without a doubt. Can't be on the ground, and that's just going to be a clear path for Islam. But there is, in my opinion, a little bit of an overreaction to the success that Ian Garry had against Belal Muhammad and against Shavkat in the takedown defense. Now, you're hearing him right now saying how high level he is in his takedown defense, how well he's done with it, and all these things that he has done, with the camp he's with and what he has done against Belal and all those things. But there is absolutely overreaction to it or the success that he has had, because Belal went 0 for 7 on takedowns. That does look good when you're looking at it against a guy who likes to wrestle. But let's be honest, Belal is nowhere near where he was, especially in his championship run, even over the last couple of years. Maybe he's not on the special juice anymore. I don't know what he's on now, but he definitely doesn't look where he was at that point. And now Belal's 38 years old. So this isn't a guy that's like in tip-top shape and has found a bunch of success over his last 3 fights. Belal is only 3 for 18 on takedowns. So it's not that he is finding all this grappling, wrestling success and then Ian stuffed it. He's kind of not really going to. He kind of hasn't really had it in him to really find that success. So I think it's a little bit overblown of the success that Ian had there. And also against Shavkat, Shavkat was only 2 for 10 on takedowns, which does look good when we're looking at that number. But if you dig deeper, Shavkat had 12 minutes of control time, nearly half the fight of control time on Ian Garry. He was pushing him up against the fence, any takedowns, control time, and that to me is if Shavkat, which obviously Shavkat's a high-level fighter, but if Shavkat's having that kind of success, I do believe Islam is going to have far more success in those particular spots here. And also, besides for the 2, fighters I just said with Belal and Shavkat, primarily most of the guys that Ian has fought were strikers. So he was the guy to really have that advantage in the wrestling. He could work his striking, and then if he needed a level change and mix it up, he had that advantage. That's obviously not going to be a situation here on Saturday night. He is absolutely not going to have that advantage here. And I do think that, the takedown threat can also open up opportunities here for Islam, where he's going to be able to march forward, throw shots, and then look for those takedowns. And yes, Ian is going to be the better striker between these two. He's going to have that kickboxing. But the issue with that is he has no real power. I mean, Ian does not have power in his hands. Out of his 11 UFC fights, he has 3 knockouts, and over his last 6 fights, I think they were all by decision. So this isn't a guy that is heavy-handed here. He's going to pitter-patter the shots, look to win rounds that way. And Islam can freely move forward here, throw big-time shots, not worry about the power coming his way. This isn't like him facing Dustin Poirier, where Poirier's got massive power and he's a big guy. I don't really see that in this spot here, where Machado, I think, lacks the physicality, lacks some of that strength, where really you're going to see Islam look to get these takedowns, find success. And that's where I'm going with this here, is I do believe that Islam is going to find these takedowns. He is going to really wear on Ian and really show levels on the ground here. Even though, Ian's gotten better, I think this is going to be levels here. So getting off the minus 340 number at Islam, I'm going Islam Makhachev by submission, which is at plus 320. I think that's a nice little sprinkle spot here on this main event. I think that he's going to work him. I think he's going to really drown him, and then a spot finally lock in that submission. It's going to be Islam Makhachev by submission plus 230. And the next one you're going to talk about is going to be Mackenzie Dern. She is minus 245 in the comeback here. We have Gillian Robertson. She is plus 162. Now, you got Dern, who is a strong grappler with elite level submission game, and she's going to come forward. She is going to be very aggressive as well, and she's going to be looking for those takedowns because she is probably the best female grappler in the sport today. And there is a lot of good female grapplers out there, but she is the top of the top when you're talking about female grapplers in this sport. She's going to be aggressive, come forward, and she doesn't have the greatest takedown defense because she doesn't care being down on the ground. If her opponent wants to go to the ground, she is more than, inviting to go to the ground as well. She wants to be there. She believes in it. She's got elite level jiu-jitsu, and that's where she can find success. Now, she has each fight improved her striking. I think we're seeing that, getting a little bit more confident in it, a little more cleaner in her boxing, and that's going to help her absolutely in this fight. While you've got Gillian here, who is another solid grappler with submission ability. She's got some wrestling. If this fight gets to the ground, she's definitely going to be, hunting for those submissions as well, which really brings an interesting dynamic to this fight. 2 high-level grapplers. I think that's going to be a fun part of this fight. Now, over the last 4 fights, Gillian has won by decision out of 3 of them there. So she's won positionally, looking to get those takedowns in that manner. Now, one of the things that she does need to do, I think here, Gillian, is look for takedowns. Now, I know that sounds silly, but, I just talked about how great Dern is on the ground, and now I'm saying Gillian needs to get to the ground. The biggest issue here on the Gillian side is the fact she doesn't have striking. It's very, very, very weak striking. Very basic combinations, no real process to her striking. She doesn't set anything up very well. It's pretty much marching forward, throwing straight shots, and most of the time using it just to cut distance to get her hands on it and look for takedowns, or at least look to get into the clinch, because she's not comfortable at range. She's not comfortable with those shots. And then even top of that, just a power. Gillian by far is not going to have the power that Dern has. Dern is going to be the harder hitter between these two. I think that she's going to have she's making the improvements in her striking. We're seeing that. Also, Dern pushes out far more volume. So she's going to be the harder hitter, the better striker, more volume. And then I also think that she's going to be able to go out there and really just bully Gillian on the feet. I think Dern's going to bully her, push forward, throw big shots. And I'm not really sure if Gillian's be able to take those kinds of shots. Another issue here for Gillian is that she lacks physicality and strength. And I think that's something we have seen throughout her career, is that she just doesn't have that. And I think Dern is going to be the much stronger fighter between these two. I think Dern in the clinch is going to find a lot of success, where she's pushing her opponent up against the fence, can be throwing elbows, throwing knees, dirty boxing, better striker, stronger, and keeping her in those spots where she wants to. And Dern's going to land the harder strikes, more damaging, more impactful strikes, I think, clearly in this fight here, which could, really turn around. If it's kind of close round and Dern's the one landing, the more impactful shots, she's going to get this round. And I think that's where there's going to be a gap between these two. I think Dern's physicality also is going to be a major factor here, where she can be able to have that strength advantage, not only just a skill advantage, but the strength advantage on top of that to counter some of this grappling, counter some of this wrestling, and find herself on top. And then the last advantage that Dern also has is experience in 5-rounders. This will be, or Dern has gone already, 5 rounds 4 times in the UFC. This will be the first time that Gillian has ever been in a 5-round fight in the UFC. So I think this is a huge spot for her. Obviously, the big spot, But this is really setting up for Dern. I think Dern is better everywhere. She also has, the higher strength of schedule here. I think Dern can really beat her on the feet, on the ground. I really think it's a one-way fight where Dern's going to absolutely dominate here. So give me Mackenzie Dern, but I think Dern's going to do it inside the distance here. You can get a plus money number there. Dern by KO or submissions plus 180. I like that spot. I think she absolutely goes out there, dominates, gets her hand raised, keeps the belt. It's going to be Mackenzie Dern inside the distance at plus 180. And the next one here we're going to talk about is going to be Tresean Gore. He is minus 115 on the comeback here. We have Vicente Luque. He is minus 105. Now you got Luque here, who is a well-rounded fighter and a long-time UFC vet. 17-8 in the UFC and has been in some absolute wars between many opponents. But one of them sticks out the most. Obviously, anyone who's researching this fight is the Jeff Neal fight. Now that's a career-altering beating that Luque took. I mean, it was just, he was battered throughout the fight. Obviously, we know what happened after the fight. There was brain bleeding. There was issues that he had. There was health concerns. Is he going to be back in the cage? Is he ever going to, where is his career at? And being in his early 30s, that's a bad sign. That's definitely a concern, having that kind of beating for a guy that primarily leaned on his durability. It's a guy that would go to war, stand there in the pocket, take the shots. Obviously, now he cannot absorb those kinds of shots. Well, you got on the other side here, you've got Gore, who is far less experienced. We've got Gore, who is 6-4 as a pro, and you've got Luque, who's 24-12 as a pro. So the experience level is massive between these two guys. But Gore is a good wrestler who does have a lot of physicality, who can go out there and get the wrestling going if he needs to. He also is willing to brawl and does have some power. And that really brings me to my biggest issue with the Luque side, and that's his durability. I mean, I think it's pretty clear the durability is a big time issue. He's discussed it in multiple interviews, even prior to this week and in other fights. He has said, hey, there's concern about, what kind of damage I can take. There's concern about my health, down the road. There's multiple concerns about all these things that, how he is going to absorb these kinds of shots. And that to me is already a problem. Also, you've got to look at his fight recently against Joel Alvarez, which was, I think it was like the end of the second or third round, or not the end of the third round, but the middle of those rounds where, he was getting beat up and he was telling his corner, like, I'm kind of done. Like, I don't think I can go anymore. His corner now did what they're supposed to do, talk him up, get him fired up, get him ready to go. And he went out there, still lost, but, saying these things outside the cage, saying these things, in the cage during a fight, all these things are just not setting up well, in my opinion, for Luque, and just worrying about what he's going to absorb here. You also look at the fact that, Gore throws heat. Gore is going to test that chin. Gore is going to be throwing and marching forward. I think one clean shot could put this away. And not even just meaning that he's just going to flatline Luque, but I think one clean shot, if he hits him and Luque's hurt, I mean, this guy, he's probably going to turtle up. He's probably going to, shell up, not want to take that kind of damage once he knows that he's been rocked. And I think it could be the end of the fight here. And also, the last two wins for Luque, he didn't have to absorb any damage here. So it worked out very well for him here. And I think this fight will be a different kind of fight. But the other two fights, the other two wins that he had, Thembe Garimbo, landed 5 significant strikes and then got submitted by Luque. Kelvin Gastelum, who's pretty much given up on fighting, never in shape, landed 12 significant strikes and then was submitted there. And he was able to protect that chin. So that worked out well. He was able to protect his chin, do those things where he just didn't have to take that kind of damage. But I think the mix of the wrestling of Gore, his strength, the power in his hands, the aggressive style, is going to bring a lot of problems here for Luque, who might not want that type of fight here. And at this point, I think there's a very clear decline here on Luque, where he can't absorb the shots, tons of MMA mileage, worried about his chin. Obviously, this is a step down in competition here for Luque and a step up for Gore, but I think this is kind of the end of Luque, and I just think that might be the end of his career, coming up soon. But give me Tresean Gore here, minus 115. I think he gets the job done. I think a knockout is very likely. But give me the money line here on Gore, minus 115. And the last one here we're going to talk about is going to be Ramiz Brahimaj. He is minus 128. On the comeback here, we've got Neil Magny. He is plus 100. Now, you got Ramiz, who is a high-level grappler with a 100% finish rate. This guy has 13 victories, 12 by submission, 1 by knockout, 11 of those come in the very first rounds. This is a guy who's very aggressive, who's going to come forward, who's going to throw, who's going to want to stay in your face, who's a good wrestler, who's going to, start fast and just stay in your face. It'll be interesting to see kind of how Neil Magny deals with that kind of offense, because primarily you're going to want to Ramiz is probably going to want to be on the ground, but he does have some power in his hands. Now you look at Neil Magny on the other side here. He's a longtime UFC vet, who is looking to get control time, is looking to get certain grappling situations going here. He's long, he's lanky, he's looking to kind of push you up against the fence, control you, grind on you, slow you down. And he really weaponizes cardio very well. And meaning like, he's just going to stand you, grind on you, and really believe in his cardio that you're going to slow down. And in that second, third round, the pressure, the pace is going to be too much. And that's where he has found success, forcing opponents to keep working, forcing opponents to defend up against the cage, carrying his kind of weight. And that's kind of how this is all played out. And he does have some submission ability. Now, with that being said, I do think that Neil Magny is washed. I do think that this is the end of his career. 39 years old. I think we're seeing him kind of get a little more frail, a little more weak, doesn't absorb shots very well. And you did see him in his recent fight against Amosov, which obviously is just a high-level prospect who's coming into the UFC and just dominating. But, Amosov ran through him in the first round, first round submission. Even the prior fight against Jake Matthews, which was a fight where Jake submitted him, then the ref reversed it, and then Neil ended up getting the victory. A weird scenario, but in reality, it should be Neil Magny 1-4 out of his last 5, and all 4 losses coming inside the distance, and 3 of them in the first round. And this guy's 39 years old, not having good performances here at this point. Now, striking-wise, Neil will have, some kind of advantage there when you're talking about the size advantage. He's going to have an 8-inch reach, 4-inch height advantage. But Neil has never been a guy who's ever used his reach well. Never. He just doesn't. He does. His hand speed, I think, is very slow. He doesn't have really crisp combinations. And I think most of the time he's looking to get the grappling going, wear on you, grind on you. And that's where he finds success. But, Ramiz is a guy who's very explosive, has some power, and is going to crash the pocket. And I think he's going to have that explosiveness and come forward and get inside that reach of Neil Magny and really cause problems, because he's going to have the faster hand speed, the harder hitter between these two, more aggressive, and that's going to really start to get, pile things together, being that harder hitter and having that explosiveness. And I just don't think that at this point Neil is going to be able to just kind of keep Ramiz up against the fence or top time him and get him back. I don't really see that happening here. I think there's going to be competitive moments here, but I do think a finish is very live here for Ramiz, but because that's how he gets his victories here. But at -128, I like the money line. I think that, there's going to be a point here where even Ramiz might need to, get the, win those first few rounds, and then all of a sudden need to just kind of grind out that last round if he doesn't get the finish. So give me Ramiz Brahimaj to get the job done at -128. So there you have it for my plays. Why isn't that going? Hold on. All right, it's not going. All right, there you have it for my plays for UFC. Oh, there it goes. UFC 330. If you want to become a client, link down in the description. I've got a 5% play locked in right now. We are on a 17-3 betting run. Cashed 6 of the last 7 UFC events, and I love this card from a betting perspective. I will be seeing this live in person, so we're cashing. So let's get the job done. I'll see you next week, and let's cash.